I'm definitely willing to adapt to any pressure that racing brings me.
Details podcast. I'm Dan Williams, your host, and today, you know it, another special guest, an up-and-coming driver, Daneyza Cabrera from Howe, Indiana. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
It's great.
It's my Sunday morning, get to hang out with an up-and-coming driver. Here's one of the things that's really cool about what I do. I interview a lot of younger up-and-coming drivers, but there's a pretty good chance that a lot of you guys, because of the level that you're competing at and how your journey is going, that you're going to be super famous one day. And I'll just say this right from the beginning. When you do get big and famous, you got to come back and give me another interview.
Oh, for sure.
All right. So let's just dive right into it because I really dig your story. It's different than a lot of the people that are coming through. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of what your mission is.
Okay. My name is Daneyza Cabrera. I'm 19 years old. I live in Howe, Indiana, and I grew up in Florida. I found my passion for racing from a very early age, from things from Hot Wheels or driving on my parents' laps while they controlled the pedals. And things like that really sparked the passion for me for motorsport. And right now I am aiming towards a Formula 4 seat for 2027. And to compete for that, I have to do 6 months in go-karts in Orlando, and that would be about 2,800, and I definitely need sponsors for that. I'd make sure that my sponsors always know that there's a lot more to it than just a logo on a car, and that I'd live up to their expectations on and off track.
All right. So let's dive into this a little bit. You were born in Michigan and then you were raised in Florida.
Yes.
Hot Wheels were a big deal for me too coming up. And I had a huge collection. Did you have a lot of Hot Wheels?
Right now I collect mostly like the F1 cars, the Legos and stuff, but definitely when I was younger I had a lot of Hot Wheels.
Did you have one that was like of particular interest to you that like it just was that you can remember even right now?
I'd say that, there's a funny story with one. I used to document the races a lot when I was little with the Hot Wheels. And one of the times that I was doing that, my sister, she was throwing one of them at me so that I could catch it, and it like hit my lip and it like cracked my lip right here. And that was pretty funny.
And what car was that got thrown at you?
I think it was like a green Corvette Hot Wheel.
So obviously you had the bug for cars. Where did that come from? Was this your parents or siblings, or what got you into starting to, like play with the Hot Wheels and like become car obsessed?
I like to believe that I am the reason that I sparked a passion for racing because I don't have any history of racers in my family or people wanting to race. So that's just something that I found as I grew up. That was something that I wanted to pursue as a career.
Yeah. And if I were to ask your family members about you, what are they going to tell me?
I'd say that my family would probably say that I'm chasing adrenaline half the time and that I'm very dedicated to racing. And usually I'm pretty shy around big groups of people, but when it comes to things like being invited to the Indy 500 and things like that by Team Penske, I'd say I'm pretty outgoing, asking people about sponsors and networking and things like that.
Holy macaroni. Let's back up and touch on that because how cool. So you got invited to go to the 500. Tell me, first of all, how that came about. Second of all, how you could help me get my products into Penske Network. Third of all, how cool was that? And holy crap, go ahead and tell me this story.
So my mom's fiance, Cody, he works at Everlast Roofing, and he does a lot of work with Team Penske, and he gets tickets a lot for the Indy 500 or the Sancio Grand Prix. And we've been twice. I almost went to the Indy 500 one time, but I got a really bad like tooth infection and my face was all swollen up, so I couldn't attend. But when I went to the Sancio Grand Prix, I went into the garage and I just asked them if there was like anybody that they knew to help me like find sponsors for Formula 4 or how to pitch sponsors and things like that. And I talked to Morgan Dane, I believe his name is, and he told me about LinkedIn, and that's how I met Mr. Hansen. It's just been nonstop from there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Ralph Hansen, let's touch base on him real quick. We're going to talk about him more in a little bit, but he is one of my fraternity brothers, a couple years prior to me being in the same fraternity. But holy
Mhm.
moly, do you know his whole background and his whole story?
I know a lot of his background. He sent me an article telling me like to read it, and it was based about like what he's done for racers and what he's done for current racers on the grid that are very successful. So he's really inspiring, and it's really an honor to be able to market with him.
Mm. He's kind of like the godfather of cause marketing in racing.
He definitely is.
Early on, he was like the one of the first people to start getting corporate sponsorships on race cars. Like literally changed the entire racing
Yes.
to all of racing because before that, there was not very many companies sponsoring, and then when all that money came in, it took it to the next level. Pretty.
Yeah, Mr. Hansen's definitely really humble for the amount of things that he's achieved, and he's really helpful too. And he does a lot for aspiring drivers. So I definitely recommend him to people working towards racing.
Okay. So what kind of car do you drive on the road?
Right now I drive a Mercedes on the road. I'm not really sure like too much about it, but I've drove a lot of different cars. I've drove Jeep. I have a Mustang, 99 V6 Mustang, which is manual. And I'm not the greatest at manual, but I mean I can move it from point A to point B. And then I've drove Jeeps to like big SUVs and obviously go-karts at Michiana Raceway.
Okay. And so what was the first car that just made you, really look at a car and like just fall in love with it?
When I was younger, I had like a really big obsession for the Jaguar cars, and I feel like that was where it started when I was like really looking at cars and like listening for the sounds and things like that.
Okay. And so let's kind of move into what was the what was the moment that sparked you wanting to actually race a car?
So I feel like it was the first time that I went recreational karting. I it sparked that passion back up that I had since I was a kid, and which led me to finding Michiana Raceway. And ever since then, that passion has turned into a nonstop dedication.
So at what got you to the karting track? And that karting is pretty darn fun. We have one of the K1 places here, and sometimes
Mhm.
my wife and I'll go there, and it is pretty darn fun. It's intense. What I find amazing is how tired my arms are
Yeah,
on that little
yeah,
tiny go-kart. But
definitely.
tell me about that first time you sat down behind the wheel of a car and kind of like what changed in you, where that aha
Mhm.
moment was.
I definitely give a lot of credit to my mom and sisters because I was a bit younger back then when I first started karting, so they helped me a lot with the funding for like the racing attire and also the paying for the Michiana Raceway program. So the first time that I went karting at Michiana Raceway, I found that it was definitely a lot more physically demanding than I thought. Like how you mentioned, your hands get a lot more tired than just like driving a regular car, especially after a lot of laps. And then the turning and stuff, like you got to keep the wheel still and things like that. So you got to have a strong grip on the wheel. It's a lot different than I expected it to be when I first started karting, but it was obviously something that I was willing to adapt to.
Well, what did your family think when you said that you were interested in, doing more of that and kinda starting to race?
They were my family was concerned about the pricing and the strength that you have and how it's not very there's not very many women in motorsport. Um, but I stayed dedicated and I stayed so dedicated that they started to believe in me. So after any time that I face a challenge in racing or a difficult obstacle, I just make sure to keep that in my head that they believe in me and I have to live up to their beliefs.
So, r racing is really a hard sport to get into. At what point did you realize yourself that it's not gonna be a super easy journey?
I believe that I realized that racing is a lot more than just racing, and I think the most difficult part for me has been that there's a lot more to racing than just the driving part. There's marketing and sponsorships that you have to pitch to, and a lot of you have to be different, you have to be dedicated, and that's just something that I'm always willing to do for racing because I have a really big passion for it.
Yep. So I was gonna say, did that, finding that out motivate you or scare you more? But it sounds like it motivated you more just to
Yeah.
fuel the fire, huh?
Mhm.
Most people love cars, but very few decide to take it to the next level and be racing. What makes you different?
I feel what makes me different is that in my life I've faced a lot of obstacles that have shown me that maybe I won't make it to racing, and there's a lot of people that struggle making it to racing, but I think what makes me different is that I refuse to give up, and racing is just something that I'm going to do.
So tell me a little bit about your experience at Michiana Raceway.
At Michiana Raceway, it was definitely a tricky track because there was a lot of bumps on the track. There was a hairpin on the track that was also a little tricky for me to finally get the hang of. But I definitely had, like, a good experience because it taught me to just keep going even when things are hard, and that it's definitely possible because I won 2 practice races there, and I beat the fastest lap time, which got me to race the track backwards.
In reverse?
Not in reverse, but, like, in the opposite way. Yeah, I'm just racing backwards.
Got you. So you were just kinda naturally fast.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, was it harder than you expected or it just, like, really just came natural for you?
I feel like in the beginning, I was definitely going pretty slow to just get a hang of it, and by the 2nd and 3rd lap, my coaches were definitely surprised at how fast I was going for my first time doing competitive karting.
And you said it right there, my coaches. So, explain, like, apexes and racing lines to somebody who knows absolutely nothing about it.
I feel like the apex line is the fastest way to get through a turn. For example, like, I don't really know how to explain this without picture of the racetrack, but it's like if you're going in, you wanna go easy in and then fast out, and you wanna brake before that curve, but when you're on that curve, you wanna be back on the throttle, and then you wanna try to go the straightest through that curve that you can in the fastest, most efficient way.
So, how much of racing happens between your ears and how much happens between your hands?
There's definitely a big difference between the physical and mental, strength that you should have for racing. For example, karting, there's a lot of, more physical endurance that you think you should have for it. There's like you definitely get tired after a couple laps because your hands start cramping up, and that's definitely something you should train for. And the mental is a lot of reaction timing, a lot of like remembering the apex lines and things like that.
Okay. Now you eventually you broke the 41-second barrier. How did that happen?
I I was doing a practice race. There was people that would come to Michiana Raceway to do recreational karting, and my coach would put me out with them and have them follow me or have me try to pass them and stuff like that, and they had to be aware that I was actually there for training. So they would like go as I go. And while I was competing, trying to pass one of them, my goal was to break the fastest lap time, but I just did it in the race and it was really cool.
Mm. Well, what did it take for you to like to take that last to shave that last second off of your lap time?
I feel like it definitely took a lot of pressure because I feel like pressure definitely can sometimes work as my motivation to be more aggressive on track and more successful.
Now let's talk a little bit about the work that nobody sees. They see you when you're out there on the track, but in your bio, you mentioned that you're running more than 30 consecutive laps without stopping. What? Tell me a little bit about that and the work that you're putting in behind the scenes.
So it definitely takes a lot to get to that level where you just keep doing laps without stopping. Like I said, you definitely have to train your hands, your neck, your core, a lot of endurance training to be able to do that many laps. I did over 30 laps without stopping, and that was on a cold fall day. And behind the scenes, I do a lot of marketing, I do a lot of pitching to sponsors. There's definitely a lot more to racing than just the driving.
And what does a typical day of training on the track look like for you?
A typical day of training on the track would mostly be like starting slow when there's nobody on there. Like just when I would be at racing school, I would start slow, make sure like I find the best apex line, the best way to get out of a turn, how to do the hairpin correctly. And after that, the second lap, I keep picking up the speed. And then eventually I'm going as fast as I can. And just, it makes it a lot easier after learning the track.
And so, up till right now in your career, what's been the hardest thing that you've had to push through?
I believe the hardest thing in my career that I've had to push for is probably learning that there's a lot more to racing than just the driving. The marketing, the pitching to sponsors, all that stuff, like it's definitely difficult because you're asking a lot from these people and you got to make sure that you know a way to show that you're different, to show that you will live up to their expectations and not let them down.
So, from racing in weather that other people might not be racing in to pushing yourself to go through more
Mhm.
laps than other people may be going through, it seems like you're comfortable being in those uncomfortable situations. Has that mindset followed or transferred through to your regular life as well?
I think it definitely has between like work, me balancing work and racing. I definitely have to sacrifice like getting an extra hour or 2 for sleep and waking up extra early to do sim racing and endurance training before or after work, so I definitely try to fit in racing into every day, even when I had to work or when I had to do school.
All right. So let's talk about your very first win. And like in a minute, sum up, give me where it was, what you were thinking, and kind of what went through your head during that moment, not only when you won and went across the finish line, but when you were getting, when you were on the podium as well.
My very first win at Michiana Raceway was something that I've never felt before. It was a really amazing feeling and something that I've been searching for a long time, and I'll continue to search for every time I get behind the wheel. And it was it was honestly incredible. it was like the last 2 laps, and I passed the first place driver, and I set the fastest lap that same day, and it was really incredible.
So your bio mentions attracting attention from Formula 4 and Formula 3. Tell me a little bit about those conversations, how they came to be, and like that's a pretty big move.
So I started by talking to Mark Miller, who is a racer right now on the grid, and he was just giving me a lot of advice on how to make a bigger platform and how to market and all these things. And this is when I was just first getting into karting. And then after like a year, I was posting a lot on a separate account on my Instagram for racing, dedicated to racing, talking about how I need sponsors and all that stuff, and how I'm an aspiring race car driver. And one day, You Race, they DM'd me on Instagram and told me about how they were looking for a Formula 4 driver for 2027. And they explained to me that you need to compete for 6 months in go-karts, and that would be about 2,800 for 6 months. And I definitely need sponsors for that because I'm currently saving to make the move to Orlando, and it's a lot, but
Cap, cap. So why Formula One? Is what's your ultimate? If you were to look right now, what's your ultimate goal with racing? Is it Formula One? Is it IndyCar? Is it something else?
I think for a lot of people, Formula One is definitely the biggest and best goal that they have. But I believe that IndyCar is just as big and maybe even more to me because ever since I started wanting to pursue racing as a career, IndyCar has been my first option, and it's just something that has stuck with me and I won't give up on.
Yep. Indy 500. Uh, but there's like so many different kinds of racing. There's, off-road racing, Baja racing, oval tracks, the hairpin turns and all that, drag racing. It's just, I think back in the days before, the days of old, um, the racers would race in everything. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe this is early and sponsorships were different, but it was still expensive back then. But these guys would race, the IndyCar racers would be going to race sprint cars and they would be going to race NASCAR kind of races. Um, you don't see that too much anymore. It seems like most
Yeah.
everybody is just in one lane and they stay right there. Why do you think that change has come about?
I believe that it changed the way that people race in multiple different racing series because it's definitely really pricey for racing, but with the right dedication and the right mindset, I feel like it's honestly possible for anybody. You just have to stay really dedicated.
And now, let's talk a little bit about that business side of racing because racing requires skill. You got to have nerves
Mhm.
of steel and steady hands and endurance to maybe some people might think that racing is just driving a car around in a circle, but holy cow, like we were talking about earlier, it really is a physical sport
Definitely.
and kind of terrifying to tell you the truth. I mean, it's you're going fast. But it also is an expensive sport and it requires a lot of support. When did you start to realize that you were going to have to be getting into sponsorship and what does a sponsorship actually make possible for a young driver?
I realized that I needed sponsors after putting all the numbers together because anytime I hear from a team, like I've gotten a request from Formula 3, but it was just not possible for me to make that much money before 2027, even though it's something that I'd love to achieve. But for Formula 4, I put the numbers together and I knew I needed sponsors because I have to move to Florida, which is a pretty expensive city and especially in Orlando. And not just that, I'd have to find a way to also have $2,800 every month on top of rent and stuff like that. So I've decided to do real estate as well to invest into my racing career and just keep looking for sponsors.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, like, what do sponsors get? I- if somebody were to invest in you at this stage of your career, you're still up and coming. What would a sponsor expect to get for the money that they're paying? And that's really kind of one of the hard parts for a lot of companies, to get their return on investment. But tell me a little bit about what being a sponsor for you would be like.
The sponsorship is definitely more than a donation or just a logo on a car. It's a big risk for the company and it's a really big opportunity for me, but it's more for them. And I believe that I would do my best every day on and off track to prove that they did not make the wrong choice in sponsoring me. And I'd make sure to make it known that to give my sponsors shout outs in any possible way, whether it's podcast, marketing, press release, literally any way. And uh, if I'm a champion, my sponsors and my team and anybody supporting me would also be a champion because I wouldn't be able to do it without them.
Let's change that just a little bit to when I'm a champion.
Okay.
Okay, so if a company sponsors you today, what are they really investing in?
If a company sponsored me, they would be investing in an upcoming champion, and they would also be an upcoming champion because I'd make sure that they are champions if I'm a champion because I wouldn't be able to do it without them. And they would also be getting free race ticket passes, pagoda passes if that's an option, and a lot of media coverage.
Now you've spoken about your mother and your sisters being influential in your racing journey. What role have they played and how have they helped keep you going?
Well, other than helping me fund the early stages of my karting career, I they have also shown me in other ways other than racing that there's always a way to keep going and there's always a way to make it where you want to be, and I really look up to them.
And you've recently started working with Ralph Hansen. We mentioned him a little bit earlier, but he is like the the godfather of cause marketing and racing. And I mean, he's been with the biggest drivers since like the early 70s all the way through. It's hard to convey how much gratitude I have to him for all of the interviews that he set me up with Al Unser Jr. and Jim McGee. Probably one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Um, Brian and Scott from the team that just won the Indy 500, two of the guys off of that team I've interviewed before. Um, Tell me a little bit about how you met Ralph and how he's helped you so far.
So when I was invited to one of the Sancio Grand Prix this year, I went up to the garage and I was asking the pit crew workers and stuff if they knew anybody that I could talk to about sponsors for Formula 4 next year or anybody that could help me with marketing. And they led me to the PR guy, which I had talked to earlier that day. And he remembered me because I asked him a question about G Force, how much the Indy drivers experience. And he was really excited to talk to me and he let me in the garage and he told me all about LinkedIn and different ways to market and what I should be looking for and what places I should be reaching out to in Florida. So when I downloaded LinkedIn, I texted this Formula 3 team and we had a meeting and we talked about all the details for Formula 3 and the pricing and all that stuff. And after that, Mr. Hansen, he added me on LinkedIn and I sent him a message asking him about the Formula 3 team, which unfortunately I'm not able to do that next year, but I did ask him also because I saw that he does marketing. So I asked him if he would be willing to do marketing with me and help me out on my career. And he was really kind and really humble too, and he's a really great guy.
Who believed in you before the results existed?
I feel like there is definitely a couple people that I would say believed in me. That's including you right now. That's Mr. Hansen, because I still have not made it to Formula Ford just yet, and you guys are still willing to help me and things like that, and create these incredible opportunities for me. And my mom and my sisters and my mom's fiance are definitely really big supporters and my first fans, honestly, and it's really incredible.
And so, have you ever doubted yourself? And what do you do if and when that confidence kind of evaporates a little bit?
I'm not gonna lie, there's definitely been times that I've doubted myself. In the very beginning of my karting journey, there was a lot of slow journey because I was first working towards joining a karting team in Michigan, and it was really difficult to find sponsors for that because the amount that you were asking, and not just that, um it wasn't really it was kind of more like a more developed school in a way. It wasn't really a team. But after I just I just kept pushing and I just made sure that I stayed dedicated and never gave up and I won't give up.
Okay. I'm going to ask a few kind of rapid fire questions now where I'm just going to say it. They're, a few words and you don't have to elaborate for a really long time. Rapid
Okay.
fire. You ready?
Okay. Mhm.
Favorite race car?
I'd say my favorite race car would probably be a Porsche 911 because that's just been my dream car since I started having a passion for racing.
Okay. Do you have a favorite race car driver?
My favorite race car driver would probably be Max Verstappen because he's the first racer that I ever started studying and looking into and looking up to.
Dream track that you would love to race on?
My dream track would definitely be Spa because I'm really good at it on the sim.
Those darn sim racers are pretty darn
Yeah.
accurate, huh? Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite movie.
My favorite movie would be Gran Turismo because it's really like detailed and showing how it's difficult to get into racing, but it's always possible if you just dedicate yourself.
Favorite food after a race.
I'd say maybe like a hot dog. That sounds pretty good after a race.
Because they got them right there at the track.
Yeah, it's just always there.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think the most underrated skill is in racing?
I think the most underrated skill in racing would definitely be getting back on the track after failure, after losing, after crashing, things like that. That takes a lot of dedication.
And then conversely, what do you think is the most overrated skill in racing?
I think that I really wish that racing was more racing and less like media and marketing and things like that, but it's definitely a big part of racing, so you got to do what you got to do.
Okay. Who's one sponsor that you would love to work with?
One sponsor I'd really love to have would definitely be Red Bull. That's just my favorite team, and McLaren is also really interested to me. Honestly, any sponsor I would just appreciate just the same.
Fair enough, fair enough. Um, so like if we're trying to look ahead for 5 years from now, where do you see yourself?
I see myself either in Formula 3 or IndyCar series. That's my ultimate goal.
And then what does becoming a champion mean to you?
Becoming a champion to me means that all of the hard work from the beginning and a lot of hard things that I faced when I was younger and stuff growing up, it was it was all worth it to become a champion and who I will be.
Okay. And so now you're kind of, going from karts to the bigger cars, and I think that there's gonna be more of the technicalities that are gonna start to come into play. I believe. I could be off on this. But, have you started yet to study the analytics of racing and the car and that other side of racing?
I definitely have started to study, like, the other levels on top of karting, like open wheel. I've went even further than Formula 4, like, seeing the IndyCar, what they experience, and the how it's different for them, like, how in karting you can be letting off the throttle at turns, but you definitely had to be hitting your brakes in, like, Formula 4 cars, open wheel cars, like the actual racing. And there's definitely a lot of big differences in between karting and open wheel cars.
Yeah. And so I kinda mentioned before, a lot of people look at racing and they're like, "What? That's not a sport. That's just somebody driving around in a circle." What do you think that people really don't get that would kind of fuel their interest to dive deeper into racing?
I feel like people, if they understood how physically demanding racing is, how it's hot in the car, how many laps you have to do, the G-force that you experience, the training off track that you have to do, and all the reaction time and stuff, I feel like they definitely understand that it's a really physically demanding sport.
And so, being a woman in racing, there definitely a lot more fellas out there than women. Um, how do you feel that plays out when you're on the track with the other people and your interactions with them and how they treat you?
I feel like it's definitely pressure, like, it's nerve-wracking, but a lot of the time, I just use the pressure as motivation to be more aggressive on track and more successful.
Excellent, excellent. What does becoming a champion mean to you?
Becoming a champion to me means that, all the hard work and all the late nights and all the sacrifice was definitely worth it for something, and it'll be my dream. It's my ultimate goal to become a world champion with IndyCar series.
So, we talked a little bit about mentors and stuff. Do you have any mentors in the kart world from like other drivers, maybe who are older, who have reached back and kind of helped you out?
Mark Miller was definitely a really big help in the beginning of my karting. Um, my coaches connected me to him because they saw all the potential that I had while I was on the track for those 2 years, and he's just been giving me a lot of advice, and he tells me a lot of what I should be aiming for, what the next step should be, things like that.
Okay. And this is going to be kind of a layman question, but super curious. So, like when you get your race cars, do you have a number that you prefer to have on that car? Like I'm partial to the number 6. I have no idea why, but it has been my whole life.
Yeah.
Is that something that you choose and that like you kind of try to carry on throughout your racing? And if so, what is your number and why is that?
I believe that my number is 25 because since I started karting at 16, it just was my number and they just gave me that number and that was the only go-kart that I'd use and they'd only let me use that go-kart. So it was really an awesome feeling and I just stuck with that number because it seems like a really um because it reminds me of the early karting days.
Now, I know also race car drivers, like a lot of athletes, have a lot of little quirky um, rituals and traditions. Do you have any kind of quirky ritual that you have to do before that you get in the race car or anything like that?
I'd say I like visualizing the lap a lot. I don't do anything too draining because obviously you're gonna be doing that behind the wheel, but I do reaction time training and visualizing the lap a lot.
Okay. And so this one may be kind of a funny question because you're on the very early stages of your career, right? But what kind of a legacy do you at this point want to leave in racing?
The legacy that I want to leave in racing is that women in motorsport that they're capable and that it's possible to do what you wanna do, whether it's racing, whether it's another big dream, but it's possible. You just have to be really dedicated and don't let the obstacles stop you.
Okay. Now, your bio, it kind of ends with every dream needs a team. Tell me what that means to you.
To me, every dream needs a team means that every person that is dreaming for something big or working for something hard and they may not have the financial opportunities, they may not have like the capabilities, maybe disabilities. I think that if there's a team that really truly believes in you and there's sponsors that believe in you, there's marketing people that believe in you, podcast people that believe in you, it's definitely possible to achieve that dream.
Okay. So, if a 10-year-old Daneyza could see you right now, chasing the dream, what do you think she would say?
Um, I think 10-year-old me would probably be a little scared because of the I didn't choose to just drive normal race cars. I chose open wheel, and I think she'd be a little nervous, but she'd probably think I'm pretty cool.
You are pretty cool. Pretty darn
Thank you.
cool indeed. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. It looks like I got my work cut out for me to edit this thing and get it out to you so we can get it out in front of the people that matter to you right now. And
Thank you.